Doctor/therapist of Reddit. Do you have any no, that's not normal stories? If so, what abnormal habit/oddity did the patient have thinking it was normal? I had a patient with a cut in his mouth casually say, you know, when you're chewing on some glass, and I had to stop him and ask for clarification. Apparently after he finished a bottle of beer he would just bite into it. He said he liked the feeling of chewing on the glass. Nice guy though. To address a request for more context, I was a paramedic student doing a clinical rotation and the guy comes in complaining of bleeding more than usual. I don't know if it was a Pica thing, but he did admit to frequent and recent prior meth use. I always have had trouble breathing during exercise, but my mom said I was just lazy and called me the family couch potato. I always had cough that would linger for months after a cold or flu, so in general I coughed all winter. My mom called it a winter cough and didn't worry about it. My college roommate was worried about my cough and recommended I go to the doctor. I was like, oh no, it's just a winter cough. She was like, that is not a thing. Yeah, turns out I have permanently damaged lungs from years of untreated asthma and pneumonia. I'm the patient, but I used to think we sucked at walking as a society. Seems like everyone was walking into each other and not paying attention. Nope. Turns out I was losing my peripheral vision, and it was just me running into people like a jackass. Apparently, having constant upper back pain and muscle tightness is not normal. Before the pain got unbearable, I thought that my family was just predisposed to having back pain. My dad, grandmother, and various other relatives have similar issues. Then I saw a doctor and was told that apparently I had severely injured my back very early in life, which made my muscles spasm so hard that they could not loosen back up without medical intervention. I no longer have such bad upper back pain. And on the upside, my neck/shoulder muscles are swole as all hell now. I'm not a doctor or a therapist, but I had a moment like this about my own life. I didn't know I was allergic to kiwis until I was about 17. I was having a conversation with someone and brought up the fact that kiwis make your throat close a little when you eat them, and they looked at me like I was crazy. I had to ask a few more people before believing that I was actually allergic. I can lock my jaw open in a weird dislocation type of way. It doesn't hurt or anything. During a cleaning at the dentist I locked it open, so it would be easier for the both of us. My dentist had a total freak out and pulled like 3 other people into the room to show them. I always thought everyone could do it, but I guess not. Not a doctor but a nurse. Mother brought toddler in for distended belly. Asked several questions, including how toddler was eating, if she'd eaten anything different. She mentioned the toddler ate paper, string, hair, etc. often. Mom was truly surprised all toddlers don't do this. Thankfully there was no blockage and the distension was benign. Doctor referred mom to see their pediatrician for Pica. Other than that, I've typically only worked with people who were aware when something they did wasn't normal. I have scores of those stories. Maybe thousands. Every day I wind up slowly shaking my head and gently saying, nope, not normal. Most of the time it's silly, or boring, or common. There are loads of misconceptions. Most anti-vaxxers, I've found, have no idea how vaccines really work, much less basic understanding of human biology. This despite the fact that they think they are smarter than the entirety of the CDC and WHO, which is interesting. I digress. My favorite that comes to mind was when I was counseling a young couple about their infertility. As it turned out, the man was masturbating several times a day, even at the woman's most fertile time of the month, and they were both adamant that they wanted to have a child. She was sullen and angry for the whole appointment and said, he wakes up like 3 times a night to jack off. He turned to her and said, everybody does. This was in addition to maybe 5 to 9 times a day, his admission. I told him that he simply had to know that sperm are lost with every ejaculate and can only be made at a certain rate, so his count per ejaculate was absolutely low. He was furious that I even suggest he avoid masturbating for a few days a month. I gave them a calendar and have intercourse with his wife. He wanted her tested to see what's really wrong here. I advised that he give the masturbating a rest first. She left him less than a year later. When I heard that I smiled and remember thinking, good for her. Sometimes you just got to try again. I was the patient in my story. My dad has been in jail for a while, and when he came out he was super fit, while my mom was still overweight. He was trying to get back into the family, and I told my college counselor I don't understand why he's trying. I'm now in college, so he doesn't need to care about me, and he's too good looking for my mom now. Apparently that conversation showed a severe lack of empathy/relationship capability, and I was suggested to see a therapist. I was a patient in this. I have gotten stung an abnormally large amount of times from bees as kids. Every time the spot would swell up and double the size, i.e. if I got stung on my hand, my whole hand would double in size. It would be red and hurt for like a week, and then become super itchy for another week, in total lasting about 2 weeks. I thought this was normal, and what happened when everyone got stung. Even when I went to see an allergist, and they told me I was allergic, I still thought it was normal for bee stings to be like that. It wasn't until my friend told me that when she gets stung it looks like a mosquito bite and goes away in 2 days that I realized my reactions are a little extreme. Apparently getting hives when you're cold and almost going into anaphylactic shock isn't normal. Cold urticaria in Canada is a fucking bummer. If you have this condition, like I do, join the subreddit, they can help you. Do research line I did to see if you have the severe or common type. Figure out who else in your family shows signs and symptoms. It's hereditary in the common version, but sometimes the severe one manifests itself. Patient here. I was very young when I had my first period. Single digits. They were okay till I hit 10 and had 100+ days period. That was super heavy, like 4 to 6 pads an hour. Went to the gyno and was told it was normal for women to have this happen. 20 years later still getting the 100+ days periods. I find out it's cos with a dab of endo. Didn't know being tired a lot and having no energy while also feeling pretty much no joy and having no goals, dreams, etc. wasn't normal. Was for me like that most years in school and still now at university, but I just recently found out I might be struggling with /from, not a native speaker, and I never know which one is the correct one in this context, so I'll just use both. Depression. I actually found out by accident. Couldn't sleep one night, so I started watching YouTube and came across a video 10 things of depression or something like that. Scored 10 tenths and now I'm just waiting for corona to pass so I can go see a therapist. Not the doctor, but after I had a UTI I was given antibiotics and was complaining to my housemate who was a med student how awful they made me feel, and I couldn't wait to be off them. She told me antibiotics are supposed to make you feel better, and from what I described I must be allergic to them. I was really surprised, because I thought allergies meant you broke out in hives or something like that. Visibly I was fine, I just had this feeling like my skin was rotting off, even though my skin looked normal. A few years later I was accidentally given the antibiotic I was supposed to be allergic to, and had no reaction, so I'm not sure what happened there. My half siblings both have porphyria, so I wonder if it's related somehow. Also patient, not doctor. Back in high school I used to sleep about 12 to 15 hours per week. I would end up sleeping anywhere between 0 to 3 hours a night, on average. My parents were against sleep aids, so my doctor could only recommend meditation. I didn't even realize at the time that it was a problem, because I was fully awake despite the lack of sleep. Flash forward to today, I manage my way around insomnia with blackout curtains, a noise machine, a very cold room, thick comforters, a sleeping mask, and a body pillow. Without any one of these, I still struggle significantly to sleep, but now I average 7 to 9 hours per night. Took me until 16 to finally realize having a swollen and tangled vas deferens on my left testicle wasn't normal. It's called *varicocele* and it affects about 15% of males. It's caused by poor blood flow and is only excess blood in the veins leading up to it. Luckily the only downsides are a bit of an ache and a 15% smaller left testy. I'm the patient, but whatever, it seems like that's what we are doing here anyway. I always thought caffeine giving you energy / making it hard to sleep was a myth. I had heard the same about sugar and chocolate growing up, actually myths, and my mom had a lot of those old wives' tales, like carrots being good for your eyes. so I just figured it was one of those imperceptible effects where you needed like 10 coffees or a nutritional deficiency to notice. In fact, I found that drinking a can of Coke before bed helped me sleep. A few of my cousins said similar things. Eventually I met someone who would be up all night if she drank a strong tea after 6 p.m. Caffeine had a crazy effect on her. So I asked some of my other friends and a lot of them had similar experiences, though not quite to that extent. Anyway, it turns out most of my family, including me, has had, and caffeine just acts like mild Adderall. Apparently it wasn't normal to try to predict future social encounters. I would try and think about what topics could come up, what people I might interact with, etc. From there I would make an elaborate web of possibilities, mainly to cover my backside, and try to avoid any of the possible scenarios that would be embarrassing. Example, if I say it to Kate, she might say B, but what if she misunderstands what I said by A, then she would say C, and I could say D, in order to fix the misunderstanding. If I say D and Kate is still upset/angry, I could say E to try and patch things up. But also, what if Kate doesn't say B? What if she says F instead, and I say G and this causes a misunderstanding? To which I say H to fix it. And if H doesn't work, then what can I say to make amends? I spent hours every single day doing this. Someone says I was daydreaming these scenarios. I'd actually talk out loud whatever was being said in the scenario. Turns out it was severe social anxiety. I didn't know people just fell asleep. It's always been a struggle for me, like it takes me 3+ hours to sleep even with sleep aids. I wake up 5+ times a night, every night, and then struggle to sleep again. Told my psychiatrist, and turns out I have insomnia and restless leg syndrome. Was kinda surprised about the legs, but I always move them, and the sleep study I took showed almost constant leg movement. Obligatory, not a therapist, but the patient in this scenario. I have anxiety and my brain always goes into worst case scenario mode, which over time has turned me into a massive pessimist. My therapist asked me how I react to bad things happening, and if my coping mechanisms helped, and when I said I don't really care when bad things happen, because I expected them to, and a pessimist is never disappointed, my therapist immediately responded with, okay, so that's definitely something we are going to need to talk about in the future. I thought everybody did it, and it was a normal coping mechanism, but it's not. I have loose shoulders. I can pop them in and out of their sockets with no effort. Sometimes it's more effort to keep them popped in. I found out this wasn't normal in my high school health class when we were learning the dangers of drinking and using drunk goggles to simulate how alcohol affects your vision. We all got handcuffed after, and I was able to slip my arms in front of me with no issue. I was to the patient in my story. I don't really like doctors, so I don't go to see them often. A few years ago I went to see one a few days before leaving for college. I told him I was tired of constantly having cuts around my mouth. It turned out I was suffering with PTSD, and those cuts in my mouth were consequences of PTSD. The doctor sent me see a dentist, and it turned out that a great part of my teeth were really damaged due to teeth grinding caused by my PTSD. My health was globally sh*t because of PTSD. Today I feel way better, no more cuts in my mouth, but I still suffer from PTSD and teeth grinding. It's getting better with the years. I was a patient, and apparently severely emotionally abused by about everyone I encountered, from friends to teachers to parents to SOS, in my childhood up to my early 20s. Like I thought people apologizing/making up was just a thing done in kids shows, and that the reality is, if you make any mistake you deserve the indefinite punishment from it. Or a single child's parents playing with them was a thing, again, in TV shows. Because TV shows are fake, so absolutely nothing of what they show is a reflection of reality. Therefore any abuse I endured was normal and just how life is. I'm a midwife in the UK. I was inducing a woman, and I had to put some medication in the woman's vagina. She gave a history of never having had a smear test, and was in her 30s, so when I felt a lump on her cervix, I was concerned. I explained to her what I had found, and that I thought we needed to get a doctor to check her out, and make a plan for a full assessment once she had given birth. At this point her husband piped up, "Oh, you mean the lump on the left side, at about the 10 o'clock position?" Yeah, that's been there for over a year. It turns out that he had casually been checking out her cervix every time he fingered her and had been checking her cervix regularly throughout the pregnancy. I advised him to stop doing that. I'm the patient in this one. I was in physical therapy, was in an accident, had to relearn how to walk as one leg developed atrophy. I was moving my good foot up and down, and the therapist was watching my foot, as when I rotated my foot up, my toes bent down, and when rotated down my toes bent up. She asked me to try and move my toes the same direction as my foot and I couldn't do it, and got a row. This isn't right. She tried to fix an in part but it never took. My GF once accused me of setting a doubt trap for her while I was asleep. When told that's not even remotely possible on any account, she responded by asking the lamp, whom she called Supreme Ring, if I was a fucking liar or not. Bipolar with schizoaffective and BPD are a tough mix. 7 meds later, and she is pretty stable. Anytime we don't know something I ask her to ask the lamp. He apparently knows all.